Hello, everyone. This is Jeff at Mississippi in the Civil War. This past week, I got to go through a new museum in Vicksburg, and thought I would do a little tour. I took a lot of pictures, and if you're in Vicksburg, I think this museum is well worth your time. So I thought I would just give you a little overview of what they have to offer. And this is new museum. I think it opened earlier this year. It's the Vicksburg Civil War Museum. It's run by Charles Pendleton, and it's located at 1123 Washington Street in Vicksburg. And I'll go over the hours and the admission fees at the end. But I'm just going to jump right into it. I think this museum has a lot to offer for anyone interested in the Civil War, and is well worth your time. To begin with, just to give you an idea, these are some wide view shots I took as I entered the museum, and as you can see, they have a lot to offer the Civil War enthusiast. Lots and lots of artifacts. If you like looking at stuff, this is the place you want to go, because boy, let me tell you, he's got a lot of original stuff related to the Civil War, and it's quality material. So if you like looking at artifacts, this is definitely the place for you. Now, to begin with, as you go in, one of the very first things you're going to see are what he calls Confederate State Secession Letters. These are the ordinance statements, the declaration of causes that each Southern state issued at the time they seceded, explaining why they were leaving the Union. And he does it for every state, and I think this is a great idea because a lot of people still don't understand the fundamental causes of the Civil War, and particularly the role of slavery in leading to the war. And by reading the Declaration of Causes by each Southern state, they make it very clear why they are leaving the Union. And just to give you an example, this is the Declaration of Causes for the state of Mississippi. And it states a declaration of the immediate causes which induce and justify the secession of the state of Mississippi from the federal union. And they make it very plain. They say, our position is thoroughly identified with the institution of slavery, the greatest material interest of the world. Its labor supplies the product which constitutes by far the largest and most important portions of the commerce of the earth. These products are peculiar to the climate verging on the tropical regions, and by an imperious law of nature, none but the black race can bear exposure to the tropical sun. These products have become necessities of the world, and a blow at slavery is a blow at commerce and civilization. I mean, they make it very clear, and I think it's great that the first thing you're going to see when you go in the museum is this, getting right to the heart of the causes of the Civil War. As you go on in, this is a pretty neat little item. It's a train bell, and it was dug up on a local plantation, the Hebron plantation, which was just east of Vicksburg. And prior to the Civil War, the Hebron plantation was well known throughout the South. It was known for its huge orchards. They produced all types of fruit that were sent to markets all over the South. In fact, here's an advertisement for a fruit seller in New Orleans named Anthony Estrado, and he is publicizing the fact that he offered fruit from the Hebron orchards. In fact, he says, Anthony Estrado, 16 Royal and 18 Canal Street, respectfully informs his friends and all others that he has engaged the whole of Colonel Hebron's orchard and 6 or 7 others in the vicinity of Vicksburg, from which he will sell by the million, thousand, box, barrel, or dozen, and he will deliver to all parts of the city, peaches, pears, apples, oranges, melons, and everything in that line. So this is a really cool artifact. Now, why a train bell ended up on the Hebron plantation is anybody's guess. But it was not found alone. In fact, it was found with several other artifacts. It was found with over 70 Civil War mini balls. And if you can see this little bottle down in the bottom of the picture, this wine bottle was in there as well, inside or up under the bell, And according to the gentleman that found it, a relic hunter named Bob Bankston, there was a note actually in the wine bottle. Unfortunately, because of seepage from water and just the decay over the years, the note was not readable, which that's a real shame, because I would love to know what that note must have said, because you've got a train bell, you've got 70 something mini balls, and then you've got a wine bottle with a note. Boy, there's a story there somewhere. I wish I knew what it was, but still, just great artifacts with a great story. This is the little sign that goes with the train bell and the mini balls and the wine. Now the museum also has a lot of images of Civil War soldiers and civilians. They've got a lot. This is just a very small sampling. I love Civil War photography. I collect Civil War photographs. So yeah, if you love looking at images from the wartime period, this again is a great museum for you. Just to pick one out of all of these to showcase, I thought this one was really interesting. Looks like a Union private dressed in frock coat, got his musket and all of his accoutrements on. The thing that really grabbed me, though, was his age. This guy looks to be in his 50s at least, which is very unusual. Now, you did have some older guys enlisting at the beginning of the war. Most of them didn't last too long. They start doing some hard campaigning, and boy, those years really started to tell. But I just thought it was interesting to see a Union soldier that old. And again, this is probably a really early war photo. He might not have lasted too long, but he might have made it through a few battles before he had to seek a discharge. Or who knows, he might have been a tough old codger and fought all the way through the war, all the way to Appomattox. There's no telling. Unfortunately, the image is not identified, so we don't have the story of this guy. But again, just a great image. And then the museum also does a very good job of telling about the institution of slavery and how it impacted Mississippi. And they've got some really neat dioramas, like this diorama of a slave working in a cotton field. They've also got a diorama of a woman working, I think she's shelling peas on the front porch of her slave cabin. So it really, this museum really talks about the African American history during the Civil War, a subject which unfortunately does not get enough attention, I think. And this is something else you don't see very often. This is a garment that would have been worn by a female slave. Again, things like this just don't survive very often. So it's great to be able to see these kind of artifacts. It really brings to life the institution of slavery and just how horrible it was. And then if you want to see uniforms, he's got uniforms. This is an original mounted services jacket for a Union soldier that served in the cavalry, along with his regulation saber. He also mounted services artillery jacket. Then a Union officer's frock coat. This would have been I believe, an infantry officer. So if you want to look at uniforms, he's got those as well. And then one of the really cool things is he's got a lot of artifacts you just don't see that often, like all of these coffee cups and boilers and improvised mess kits and frying pans and the utensils for eating. This is the kind of stuff you see them in books, at least I have, but actually getting to see them up close and personal, it really helps you get into the mindset of the soldiers and see what life must have been like for them, marching and fighting and just having to make do with very limited amounts of equipment and making the most out of what you had. And then he's also got a lot of the common things that a soldier would have carried with him. The gaming pieces, a little housewife that would have been a sewing kit that he could have used to repair his clothing, clothespins, needles, collapsible cup, fork and knife combo, pocket knives, just the everyday, utilitarian items a soldier would have carried with them that made such a difference in being able to survive out on the campaign. Here's more items like that: razors, lice combs. You want to think about it, but lice were a terrible problem for Civil War soldiers. They spent a lot of time trying to rid themselves of lice, and so lice combs, that's something that would have been indispensable. Shoe shine brush, camp mirrors, just all kinds of cool little stuff that you just don't see very often. So it's really great to be able to see these tangible reminders of what life was like for the soldiers. And then musical instruments. Every regiment had its drummers that played a very important role in helping to guide the movements of the unit. And I've always really admired the drummers, because most of them were very young men. In fact, a lot of them were in fact boys. And going to war when you're a teenager is just blows the mind. But yeah, he's got all kinds of the items used by every type of soldier, and I really like these drums. They were pretty cool. And then he's got things like, again, a utilitarian item that you would have seen quite often: inkwells. You find these quite often in Union and Confederate camps because they were so ubiquitous. Everybody needed ink and they needed a pen. In fact, here's my own. I dug this out of a Union camp in Vicksburg, and you can see this is called an umbrella inkwell because of the shape. You can see there are several examples, in fact a bunch of examples there that he's got on display in the museum. But just a ubiquitous item you would have seen everywhere because everybody used them. And then this was a really cool item. This was a wartime regulation bugle that was dug from a camp in Tennessee, and it was found in pieces. It was very thin sheet brass, and over the years it had deteriorated and just broken up into pieces, and someone painstakingly put this thing back together. No telling how long it took, but it's incredible they were able to take these little pieces of metal and somehow put them back into its original form. It's just amazing. And then this is a state of New York belt buckle. It's got bayonet holes in it where someone did a little bayonet practice on it. Now this was probably done by a bored soldier. It was probably not done in combat. Bayonet wounds during the Civil War were very uncommon. It was rare that the two sides got close enough to use bayonets. So it was probably done by a bored soldier just playing around, but still just a very cool item. And again, get you into that mindset. I can just imagine a bored soldier sitting around, hey, let's do something. And hey, I've got a belt buckle. Let's see if we can penetrate it with a bayonet. And that's the kind of crazy things, young men will do when they got too much time on their hands. And then here's more examples. These are Confederate belt buckles and also some Union complete buckles and belts. See a lot of the utilitarian Confederate Georgia frame buckles. Not as fancy as a nice CS buckle, but a lot more common because they were much simpler to make. And for the Confederacy, with a very limited manufacturing base, simple was better. And so they turned out thousands of these frame buckles, as relic hunters can attest, because you find a lot of them in Confederate camps. And then canteens. You've got a lot of Union issue bullseye and smooth side canteens. Again, a very common item, but one just about every soldier would have had because you needed water on the march, and these guys, their canteens would have been one of their most useful items. So every soldier had his canteen and kept it close because you didn't want to lose your only source of water. And then this was another just cool little item. It's a U.S. cavalry bit boss, and it was apparently lost during the war, and a root grew up through it. And the relic hunter that found it was smart enough to just cut off the root and leave it intact, entangled in the bit, which is just a really cool little artifact. I really like that. And then this was just a little diorama that was on display in the museum. I'm not even sure which battle this is supposed to portray, but it's a nicely done little diorama. I thought it was pretty cool. And then he also has a number of Vicksburg related items, like this Confederate drum canteen that belonged to a Confederate soldier named F.C. Morrison. And you can see his name carved in it along with Vicksburg, Mississippi, which is just really cool. I love identified items. I mean, it really when you can put a story to an item that really makes it more interesting, and I really like that. And then if you like artillery, he's got a lot of artillery shells. This cannon is a reproduction, but the artillery shells behind it are very much real, and there's a lot of them. There's a lot of ordnance thrown into Vicksburg during the war, and he's got quite a bit of it on display here. So if you like artillery, you're going to like this museum. And then any Civil War buff has got to be interested in weapons. And let me tell you, he's got a lot of them here. This was a particular favorite of mine because it's identified to a Michigan soldier and has even got some of his reunion ribbons attached to the case. But this is a Pettingill revolver, and even has a picture of the soldier that owned it. And I just love things like that. I love seeing identified artifacts that, so it's got a history to it. It makes it, just so much more interesting. And then, again, more cased revolvers. And I can't tell you, you don't see a lot of cased revolvers these days. These things are not common. And when you do find them, they are expensive. But it's really neat to be able to see so many in one place. And then just about any type of firearm you can think of that was used during the Civil War, he's got one on display. So if you want to see a lot of different types of weapons, and not all of them are military, there's a lot of civilian weapons too from the time period. And it's not uncommon at all to see, particularly in early war pictures, soldiers posing proudly with little, single-shot derringers like these. They may have taken them to war. They may have been a photographer's prop, but you do see quite a number of them in very early war photographs. And here's another really rare couple of guns. A couple of these pistols and these two civilian hunting rifles were made by Lewis Hoffman, and this is Hoffman. He was a hardware store owner and gunsmith in Vicksburg, and he made his own weapons, and they are very rare and very collectible today. And he's got two of the rifles and two of Hoffman's pistols, and also several of the holsters he made. Again, these are things I've read about before, but seeing them in person, you just don't see these very often because they're so rare. And it's really cool to see something like this back in Vicksburg. Hoffman, after the siege of Vicksburg ended, actually repaired sidearms, small arms for the Union Army. And then after the war, he became an even more successful businessman, owned an entire block of buildings in Vicksburg that was known as the Hoffman Block, had a huge hardware store in Vicksburg and gun shop. Very well-known citizen. And then he's got a lot of the main firearms used during the war. Cavalry carbines, infantry weapons, you name it. Here's some more bullets. He's got bullets, fuses, you name it, he's got it. And just to end this little tour, I would just say if you're in Vicksburg and you like Civil War relics, I would highly recommend going to the Vicksburg Civil War Museum. Their hours are Monday through Saturday, 10 to 6, and they're open on Sundays from 12 to 5. Admission is $7 for adults, $3.50 for those 12 and under. Anyone under 6 is free, and it's well worth your time. I highly recommend it. If you have any questions, just let me know. And I was not, I don't know Charles Pendleton. I met him for the first time when I went through the museum this past week. Very nice gentleman. I enjoyed talking with him. But these are the kind of museums I really think people ought to patronize, because I would like to see this guy succeed. He's really worked hard to build a nice museum with a lot of really quality artifacts, and I hope he gets the business he deserves. But if you've got any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them. If you like this video, please give it a like and even subscribe to my channel. But thank you for watching, and it's been great being with you this afternoon.